to Krishna, without hankering, simple, fixed, self-controlled, a balanced eater, sane, mannerly, prideless, grave, sympathetic, friendly, poetic, expert, and silent. Out of these 26 prominent features of a devotee, as described by Krishna Das Kaviraj in his Chaitanya Charitamrita, the qualification of being poetic is especially mentioned herein in relation to Shukadev Goswami. The presentation of Srimad Bhagavatam by his recitation is the highest poetic contribution. He was a self-realized learned sage. In other words, he was a poet amongst the sages. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Gadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shiyataf Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagre Jatam Sahagana Raguna Tanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshvari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vansha kalpatirapyascha kripasantubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vikasa Swaminiti Namane. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane. Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pracharine. Nirvishesha Shrinivari Paschati Deshatanine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, Shukadev Goswami, Shanika is describing Shukadev Goswami as the poet among the sages. And this purport, Srila Prabhupada starts it off by listing all the godly qualities. So these are called godly qualities because they're actually all qualities of God. And because we are one in quality with God, we also have these qualities naturally. The qualities are kindness, peacefulness, truthfulness, being equable, faultless, magnanimous, mild, clean, non-possessive, a well-wisher to all, satisfied, surrendered to Krishna, without hankering, simple, fixed, self-controlled, balanced eater, sane, mannerly, prideless, grave, sympathetic, friendly, poetic, expert, and silent. So these are all the qualities we are trying to develop when we practice devotional service in Krishna consciousness. So we are currently covered over, at least myself, by the three modes of material nature, by the gross body, composed of flesh, stool, and blood, and we feel attraction for these bodies, even though they're, when we really become aware, it's really a gross machine. Like you may feel attracted to a member of the opposite sex, but if you just imagine them without their skin, then all the illusion fades away. It's skin deep. And then beyond, or further inside the body is the gross body, we have a subtle body that's covering us. The mind, the intelligence, and the false ego. And this, the Bhagavad Gita describes that the gross body, the intelligence, the mind, they're all sitting places of this lust. So this lust is the principal disease that we face. And it's situated in these places, in the gross body, in the mind, in the senses. So to become detached from this matter, we have to practice Krishna consciousness. And when we do so properly, then we are purified. All these impurities that we face, lust, greed, and anger, the veil is lifted, and we are exposed in our natural state. So that natural state is all these 26 qualities describe this natural state. And all these qualities are found to some degree, materialistically speaking, in the material world. There are people who are simple, fixed, self-controlled, mannerly, grave, friendly, so-called at least. But ultimately, they have all these qualities with the goal in mind of attaining material enjoyment. So one may be friendly in a diplomatic spirit and making good relationships in order to further solidify one's field of sense gratification. So yeah, we are covered by the modes of material nature, and therefore these qualities are dormant within us. So these bad qualities, they manifest themselves in material conditioning. The opposite of friendly, for instance, or let's not do that. The opposite of, anyways, what I'm trying to say is there may be some mundane bad quality, but that's simply a reflection of a spiritual quality, like say envy, for instance. The gopis envy each other. Now, this isn't materially contaminated. This is purely spiritual, because at the end of the day, they just desire to serve Krishna better and better, and they compete with one another in that way. And so, this process of Krishna consciousness is the process of purification. Now, how do we do that? How do we develop these good qualities? Because honestly, none of them are found when we really look within. Well, it's all the mercy of Krishna. We can't so the process of Krishna consciousness, and Srila Prabhupada does say this, that this is the process of developing, the essence is that Krishna consciousness is the process from which we can purify ourselves. But in actuality, we're not purifying ourselves, but we are simply surrendering to Krishna. Krishna is Patita Pavana. Is it Patita Pavana Hetu Tava Avatar? So this is describing Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as, Nityananda, correct? Lord Chaitanya, yeah. As Patita Pavana. I want to ask the new fellas, or the new Matajis, what does Patita Pavana mean? Yeah. So, Pavana means purifier, purifying agent. Patita means fallen, so the savior of the fallen, the purifier of the fallen. That's us. Could anybody think of a very common verse, not the initiated devotees, please. A very common verse we say every day that includes Patita Pavana. Vancha kalpataribhyascha kripasantubhyevacha patitanam pavanepyo vaishnavepyo namo namaha. So this is describing the Vaishnavas also as Patita Pavana. So we are, or no, not us, not me, but when we become devotees, we also become Patita Pavana, because we take up this mission of Lord Chaitanya. So this is the process. Krishna consciousness is the process of purifying ourselves and attaining these godly qualities. But actually, we are not attaining. This is simply the mercy of Krishna. And so we do develop good quality in the sense that we develop sincerity. And through that sincerity, Krishna casts his mercy on us. So this is in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 20, Text 16. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, "The Lord openly says that performing great sacrifices or undergoing the austerities of mystic yoga practice cannot satisfy him. He is pleased only by elevated character and behavior. And so this elevated character and behavior Srila Prabhupada's talking about is sincerity. So the process, practically speaking, is that we become sincere to the servants of the servants, and then the mercy comes down, trickle down economics. There's no reaching up. I mean, in a sense, there is reaching up, calling out for help, sincerely praying, but we can't climb there unless we're sincere. So yes, the mercy flows through the devotees, so we have to serve the devotees, surrender to the devotees, and in that way we can attain these godly qualities. Now, a pure devotee never actually thinks he has attained the good qualities completely. He may, this is completely beyond my knowledge, but maybe objectively he knows. But I mean, even then, he realizes it's all the mercy of Krishna, is the point, that we are nothing in our advancement in devotional service is simply the mercy of Krishna and the devotees. So in this spirit of Patita Pavana, there's a verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila 7.23. Actually, you can pull this up, Prabhu. This is CC Adi 7:23. There you go. Patra vichara nahi stana ye yan ha paya tang ha kare prema dana. So translation, in distributing love of Godhead, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates did not consider who was a fit candidate and who was not, nor were such distribution should or should not take place. They made no conditions. Wherever they got the opportunity, the members of the Pancha Tattva distributed love of Godhead. So Patita Pavana, Savior of the fallen, this is the founding principles of this Gaudiya Vaishnav Sampradaya, to distribute love of Godhead whoever you meet. And that's how this is the mission Srila Prabhupada gave us, and our own spiritual masters have passed this along to us. This mission of saving the fallen, and this is practically how we make advancement in devotional service, by talking about Krishna consciousness to whoever we meet. We may be in an Uber ride, and we may be with somebody for 30 minutes, and we may feel like, oh, if I talk about Krishna consciousness right now, and then I agitate them, and it's going to be an awkward car ride for 30 minutes. It's undesirable. So we may have to step outside of our comfort zone and preach to anybody, anywhere, no matter what. And in this way, we'll receive the mercy. So this is the founding principles of this Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. Very important for us to understand this, to not be afraid to state who we are, what we represent, what we stand for, because we don't care for people's mundane concerns. Okay, so these 26 qualities are also ways to measure progression in devotional service. So our spiritual advancement is actually measured by our detachment from matter, and particularly development of these qualities. So there's the quality of, we may even feel more contaminated as we practice devotional service. We may feel like our minds are getting agitated. We're constantly battling with our minds. maybe even more than before we were practicing Krishna consciousness. But I mean, the truth is that we're battling. That's the difference between now and then, before Krishna consciousness and after Krishna consciousness, is we're making an effort to fight the mind, and it is a struggle, it is a challenge. And we may even feel more contaminated. But in actuality, we're getting cleansed. It's as if we're cleaning out our room. Now, in order to sweep dust off the floor, you have to sweep it all in one direction, and it may make clouds of smoke, and it may be very hazy and very agitating. But this is the process. And there's this, one of the qualities mentioned is truthfulness. And so this is actually an exhibition of truthfulness. How we feel more and more contaminated as we go on. We actually become more and more realized, more and more truthful, more honest with ourselves. Another quality mentioned is equability, which means staying equal, not being swayed too much by one feeling or the next that comes up via the mind. And so this equability is measured by being aloof from material affairs. There's a verse at the end of the 2nd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita which describes that a great sage, he isn't disturbed by the incessant flow of desires. The incessant flow of desires, these material desires are always flowing in to our consciousness. So he's not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires, just as rivers, they all flow in the ocean, but the ocean remains forever still. So I really like that verse. So yeah, equability is measured by aloofness from mundane affairs. Personally speaking, I'm practicing brahmacharya now, so I don't know. Anyways, I'm basically like living under a rock. I don't watch the news or any of this, and it's amazing. Yeah, I don't know what's going on out there. I hear the latest political affairs, and it's just crazy, and I've just totally been aloof from it, and I don't even notice because we're constantly engaged here in the brahmacharya ashram. Anybody Krishna conscious can be engaged, of course, 24/7, and be aloof from mundane affairs. We may completely forget about time to time we may completely forget about who we were before taking up to Krishna consciousness. And we may be situated purely in our spiritual identity in those moments. And as we keep practicing, those moments become more and more prevalent, that we are more and more situated in our real spiritual identity. Another quality mentioned is non-possessiveness. So this happens through the development of knowledge given by the Shastras, given by Srila Prabhupada, given by all our Shiksha Gurus. So this truthfulness, it's the truth. We don't possess anything. The ultimate possession, as we may feel, is this body. I have the capacity to move around. I can't move around other people's bodies. I can at least move around my body, but I can't control when I get old, when I get diseased, when some emergency comes up, when I have to go to the bathroom. None of these things can be controlled. And so through development of knowledge, we're being materially contaminated and coming from that background, we do feel that we're the body, and we do feel like we're in control. But as we practice Krishna consciousness more and more, as we practice more shravanam, more hearing, then we gradually realize that we actually don't possess anything, that everything is attained through the mercy of Krishna. These bodies have been acquired through our association with the modes of material nature and our karma. Another quality mentioned is fixedness, or being fixed. So being fixed is indicative that you're transcending the modes of material nature. Now, don't get me wrong, there is fixedness within the modes of material nature. People may be fixated on getting this girl, getting this car, getting whatever material acquisition. But their minds are always disturbed. So this fixedness refers to stillness of the mind. When we're in the mode of passion, our mind, we may be fixed in some sense, but our mind is not still. It's constantly running, constantly chasing, constantly agitated. But this godly quality of fixedness refers to a stillness, a composure, and this is indicative that we're rising above the modes of primarily Rajagun and Tamagun, passion and ignorance. Another quality developed is being personable. So this is within the quality of being a well-wisher to all, friendly, mannerly, sympathetic, and poetic. So Shukadev Goswami is primarily described as being poetic in the purport that we're reading. So this poeticness is a quality of the Vaishnava. This is one thing that makes us unique as Vaishnavas, is that we're not impersonalists. We're not unreasonably emotional, but we're not inert like stones. And so this poetry, Srila Prabhupada says, poetry is an expression of deep love. And so this is one function of our sampradaya. So poetry, it's from my very mundane, contaminated knowledge anyways, poetry is it's very close emotionally. We may be able to convey something in a poem that we may not be able to convey anywhere else. You're drawing or writing or singing or something. Well, I guess singing is poetry. So this is an expression of love, and as personalists, we strive to exhibit this for Krishna. So in mundane affairs, this poetry exists, these emotions exist, but they're all striving towards material affairs. So there's so many poets out there, so many songs. If you put on the top 50 pop songs right now, the ones that aren't too Tamastic, they talk about, oh, I miss you, and I want to be with you, and all this, talking about the opposite sex. And so this is basically lust, that we're seeking to satisfy our own senses in the material world. And so, constantly hankering, these songs are about, oh, I want you, I miss you, and then once I have you, and then you leave, and then the songs they get angry, and then someone else comes into this artist's life, and then they write more love songs, and then they write more anger songs, and then more love songs, more anger songs. It's not fixed at all. It's their minds are really disturbed, obviously. So this mundane poetry, it's Srila Prabhupada relates it to how a donkey sings. Yeah. He thinks he's so, moaning and groaning, but it's really just disgusting. Anyways, this poetic quality, it's described as a godly quality because Krishna also has this quality of being poetic. It's described in Krishna book that after the Rasa Leela dance, Krishna, he walked down the banks of the Yamuna with the gopis, reciting poetry. Also, when Krishna and Balaram went to Mathura and got trained up, or so-called trained up by a spiritual master, when Krishna exhibited that pastime, this is an excerpt from that chapter 45. They also learned the art of questioning and answering by immediately composing poetry within the mind. So this is an art that Krishna and Balaram practiced, is instantaneously composing poetry within the mind in the matter of answering questions. And we see this is exactly what Shukadev Goswami did. So Maharaj Parikshit was asking him questions, and Shukadev Goswami poetically and spontaneously spoke. And so, yeah, this poetry is an activity of Krishna. We shouldn't imitate this. The composition of our songbooks, this is all compiled, this is all written by pure devotees. And we can't imitate that, because our poetry, our emotions, it reflects our desires, it reflects our state of mind. And while in a contaminated consciousness, when we express that, when we reveal our minds in that way, then it simply contaminates others, because the mind, it's infectious. Now, a Paramahamsa, he isn't affected by these affairs. But yeah, just by being out in the world, if we're not in such a pure state of mind, we may be so agitated, we may see all sorts of things that aggravate our senses, and someone may be angry in their car and they may honk at you for no reason and just be really nasty, and that may rub off on you, and then you do it back. And then, the material world, it's just a constant place of turmoil where people are all rubbing off on each other on all the wrong ways. And I've had this experience when I'm out there, and I'm not in such a pure state of mind, then I definitely acquire the modes of material nature that I'm exposed to. So yeah, this poetry, we may be a songwriter, and in the mundane world, we may have been a songwriter, we may have written all these things. And there is scope for doing that in Krishna consciousness, but we have to recognize the helpless state we're in, so that we could do that with pure intention. Okay, so could you pull up something else, Prabhu? This is in Antya Leela 5:102. So another reason, generally speaking, why we only recite, we only sing, in the temple room at least, what has been composed by the Vaishnava Paramahamsas, is because there's a science to poetry, actually. And this is something, in the modern world, people are completely unaware of this. The verse goes, Yadva tadva kavira vakya haraya rasabhasa siddhanta virudha shunite na haya ulasa. So this means, in the writings of so-called poets, there is generally a possibility of overlapping transcendental mellows. When the mellows thus go against the conclusive understanding, no one likes to hear such poetry. And so this, again, can be related to the analogy of the donkey. No one likes to hear such poetry. When we're not in knowledge, we're not composing good poetry with a good state of mind, knowing these subtle aspects of different moods, rasas, when we compose, then they can overlap, and it's not very nice. So the purport, Yadva tadva kavi, refers to anyone who writes poetry without knowledge of how to do so. Writing poetry, especially poetry concerning the Vaishnava conclusion, is very difficult. If one writes poetry without proper knowledge, there is every possibility that the mellows will overlap. When this occurs, no learned or advanced Vaishnava will like to hear it. Yeah. So this is all described in detail in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, where Rupa Goswami elaborates on these different rasas, these different combinations of moods in service to the Supreme Lord. And so in poetry, there's specific moods, and there's a specific way to combine them, which is pleasing to Krishna. So yeah, we're also aspiring after these Vaishnava poets. By reading their poetry, by singing them, we can imbibe the mood that they have, which is it's a gem. Through their mercy, they've given this to us, especially Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Narottam Das Thakur, so many wonderful poets that we pray and using their poems every day. So yeah, we're aspiring after this. So about the mood of Vaishnava poets, Srila Prabhupada says the Krishna lover is another kind of lunatic or poet. So the Krishna lover is another kind of lunatic. So sanity is actually one of the godly qualities. But Srila Prabhupada says that the Krishna lover is a lunatic. But the key point is he's another kind of lunatic. He's not a lunatic how we may think of him. So yeah, sanity in this context, I mean, real sanity is insanity for Krishna. That's real sanity. Being really devoted no matter what the circumstances are. And this insanity refers to social convention. So what we're all doing here, especially the Westerners here, dressing up like this and shaving our heads like this, it's very unconventional. And it appears to be insane to some people. I had a friend actually who I was talking to, and he saw not me, but he saw us in Little Five, and he was thinking, oh, they're trying to convert people to a religion, and they're weird and culty, and all this. And then I ran into him on campus at GSU, and I got talking with him, and we talked for like an hour and a half, and I preached to him, and by the end of it, he was saying that, yeah, like I didn't understand what y'all were doing, but what you're doing makes a lot of sense. He was telling me this. And so people may have these preconceptions about what we do, but when they open the books, when they get knowledge, then they see that this is real sanity. Because right now there's no knowledge of this. And the Western world's a big milieu of ignorance. And so, yeah, this insanity is another instance of insanity is in the song Ye Anilo Premadana, where Narottam Das, he says, Pashane kutibo mata anale pashibo, Goranga gunera nithi kota gele pabo. So this means I will smash my head against the rock and enter the fire. Where will I find Lord Gauranga? And so this really well demonstrates the insanity of the Krishna lover. How this is completely unconventional. If someone did that, they if you see someone outside, smashing their head on the pavement and burning themselves, where is God? Where is God? He'd be put in the hospital. This is insane, But this is the mood of the pure devotee. It's not something we can understand. Actually, Srila Prabhupada said this, Krishna lover is another kind of lunatic or poet. He says this to Allen Ginsberg on May 13th, 1969. Allen Ginsberg, for those that don't know, he was a supporter of ISKCON in the early days. He was one of these donkeys. I used to really like his poetry, actually. Yeah, I wrote a whole 10-page paper on him. Yeah. Sorry? Yeah, Vyas Puja offering, inspiring. Yeah, he's really extravagant. Yeah, so. Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
No, I'm not playing.
Yeah, anyways, I remember reading his poetry and it's just like he like really imbibes insanity. Yeah. Like thankfully I don't remember anything off the top of my head, but and it was just like crazy stuff and like, writing poetry about going to the slums and seeing the bums and I don't know. I can't think of another rhyme with that, but just seeing the drug use and all this and like writing about those kind of rasas, drug use and uh, needles and sex. Yeah, really disgusting stuff. Anyways, Srila Prabhupada, in this conversation he has with Allen Ginsberg, he says this and he talks about poetry. And he in this conversation he actually mentions these 26 qualities. And he elaborates on the aspect of poeticness, because Allen Ginsberg is a poet. And then Allen Ginsberg, he mentions, I've developed most of these qualities, but definitely not sanity. That's what he says. And then Prabhupada says, oh, well, devotees should be insane for Krishna. Yeah. Anyways, that's about all I have. I can open it up for questions and comments. Corrections, please.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So, this point you were making about about your friend, not understanding what we were doing at Little Five and things like that. Because of this, many devotees, like, nowadays they conclude that, we should change the style of preaching. Mm-hmm. Srila Prabhupada, he accommodated that in some instances. However, the thrust of his emphasis was about educating the people about why we are doing what we are doing, not changing so much. Or even if there was an apparent change, it was to bring, for instance, the process of Sankirtan is something that is very alien to the Western civilization. I mean, even in India, it's not that all the other. It's not even Hindus don't really know anything about Sankirtan. I mean, like, little idea, a little pious, maybe like good thing. Not all the time though. It's like they get that. I mean, like Srila Prabhupada. There was this instance where Srila Prabhupada, he didn't want our devotees to be viewed as beggars, and he restricted Harinam to some extent, in India. So that was there, but it wasn't like, the Harinam is supposed to be restricted forever in India. It was not, it was, so, but therefore Srila Prabhupada's emphasis was always on book distribution. That the more we spread these books, the more people will understand about our movement. The more, and initially they may be like, oh, this is like, what are these fanatical people trying to sell these books and this and that, but book distribution is really important because ours is ultimately an educational movement. We are trying to re-spiritualize misdirected human societies. They need to know that they're misdirected. They need to know that they need to be re-spiritualized. So it's all about education. So therefore, book distribution plays such a central role in our movement. It can never be replaced. It can never be, compromised. It always plays a central role in our movement. And yeah, you can comment, and then I have one other point.
There's this happening that happened recently in Miami where Abhimanyu Sutta Prabhu was distributing books, and this Mataji took a video of his lotus face. Wow. And it went viral anyways. I don't know how many views it has now, but 60,000 views. No, it's got like 300, almost a million, huh? Yeah, a million views. Anyways, you look at the comments section, and the Mataji who took the video, she's very supportive. She got the books, and she really likes the books. Anyways, you see in the comments, there's some comments, oh, I see this guy, he's a scammer, he comes to my school. but then the Mataji who actually got the books, she says, no, I got these books. They're really, really helping me, and she's saying all sorts of good things, backing us up. So yeah, this is demonstrative of people, off of prejudice, they may think we're weird, or they may not like us, but once they get the books, then actually the knowledge develops and they grow to they appreciate us.
I mean, after a while, especially those who are a little more thoughtful, they'll start to think, why are these people emphasizing this so much? There must be something in this, and then they start looking into it. And what happens is like we just saw with that video, you start to get more people who support this. Oh, yeah, I've taken those books. There's some reasoning in that. And it's like we're supposed to turn the tide, not go with the tide to hell, because the tide's going to hell,
Leave people with a bad impression of Srila Prabhupada's books. Just don't distribute them.
Don't do it, bro. Don't read that book.
You're right. These are a little too intense.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to read. Yeah.
That's why book distribution is so important, because it polarizes people. You're either with us or you're against us. That peace out, seriously. When someone reads our books, they see what we're doing. They see we're giving these books out. They see we're taking people's money for the books. They see people are reading the books and their lives are changing. So at that point of time, it polarizes people. I remember I was listening to a lecture of Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and in that lecture he was saying that this book distribution polarizes people so much that they were distributing books in a particular state, and it was a Christian state, and they allow freedom of religion. All religions were allowed, and they took it up to a court and all this, and they lost. Not the devotees, the non-devotees lost, but then all religions were allowed, but the Hare Krishna movement. So you can see how polarizing book distribution really is. If you're going and trying to dress like a karmi and act like a karmi and talk like a karmi, and out of their causeless mercy, they may take a book from you for free. It won't work like that. And nothing will happen. They'll take the book and they'll dump it somewhere. But when we distribute books, it polarizes people. They actually get you can see the divine and demoniac just when you're out there distributing books. You can see their nature. You can see it's right there in front of you. And so it's like you're saying, it can never be replaced.
In regards to qualities, good qualities that are observable in saintly persons, especially here speaking about Vaishnava qualities, but in general, godly qualities. I mean, Krishna describes them in chapter 16. He describes what are the qualities of saintly people, and then he tells Arjuna, you don't have to worry. You belong to the godly. You belong to the godly category. So you don't have to worry. But now I'll describe about the demoniac category. So you'll find time and again in Vedic texts, you will find that the Lord, his associates, and other saintly persons in the Vedic scriptures, they often observe these qualities, and these things are extolled. And when you come in front of a pure devotee or associate or any saintly person, immediately they understand so much about you just by looking at how you behave, and because this is a science that that your consciousness is exhibited through your qualities and characteristics. In this regard, I wanted to read an excerpt from the Ramayana. I mean, someday we'll have the book with the actual translations. I think it's already out, but I don't know how many parts are released. This is from Kishkinda Kanda of the Ramayana, where Sugriva sends Hanuman to meet Lord Rama and Lakshmana for the first time.
Yeah,
so what happens is, Lakshmana and Rama are roaming the forest. Sita has already been abducted by Ravana, and Sugriva and his party who are situated on the what hill is that? It starts with an M. Anyways, they're situated on one hill, which is a safe haven for Sugriva. And Sugriva sees them, and so Sugriva becomes a little anxious if this is, another doing of his brother Vali. So he sends Hanuman as a messenger. And what Hanuman does is he disguises himself as a Brahmana or sannyasi, and he approaches them. And he speaks. He says, this is from another translation, but anyways. O valiant strangers, who are you, whose skin gleams like gold, who are clad in robes of bark, possessing strong arms, who are sighing deeply, and whose sight inspires fear in all beings? You have the air of lions or warriors who are full of courage and heroism, armed as you are with bows resembling Indras, the destroyers of your foes. So the point is how Hanuman observes Rama and Lakshmana, that he sees some contradiction. The contradiction is that they're like kings, they're like warriors, but they're clad in bark, and in here it says robes of bark, and they're possessing strong arms, and although their sight inspires fear in all beings, still they're sighing deeply. Sighing deeply meaning there is some they are experiencing some sadness, some pain, some difficulty, but they are the destroyer of their foes. So why are they like this? What is exactly going on? Something, and so you can just see how Hanuman, by observing Lord Rama, just by looking at them, he understands so much of their current situation. He's not able to exactly pinpoint. That's why he's asking. And then what happens is. Of course, Lakshmana replies that we're sons of Dasharatha and this and that. And then immediately what Hanuman does is he gives up his form because he understands, oh, this is my adorable Lord. And not only that, he also understands that these are the members of the Ikshvaku dynasty who are the emperors of the world. So there's nothing really to fear. So he gives up his form, gives up this sannyasi brahmana guise. And then after listening to Hanuman, Rama says to Lakshmana. So Rama doesn't speak directly to Hanuman because he's a messenger of a king. So Lord Rama is a king himself. So he will only speak to a king. He won't, his messenger will speak to a messenger. This is like how that, very refined culture. So he says to Lakshmana, this is what I wanted to actually read. He said, Lakshmana, did you observe how articulate Hanuman spoke? There is nothing impossible to a king who has a minister like him. Even a foe who came to kill cannot act after listening to Hanuman. A king is so lucky to have a minister like him. By analyzing his words, he seems to be well acknowledged with Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, Vyakarana, grammar, and the essence of the Upanishads. This is, Rama Hanuman just spoke a few words, but Lord Rama, because this is a science, you depending on how a person speaks, you can understand so much about their background. Then he says, one can never talk like this without that knowledge. His eyebrows and forehead didn't move unnecessarily. His eyebrows and forehead doesn't move unnecessarily. His voice was neither too loud nor like a mutter or a whisper. He started, continued, and completed his words in a single tone. He particularly knows how to spell every syllable. Sugriva is very lucky to have Hanuman as his minister. Convey him our purpose of presence in this forest. So I'm just saying that, this way, in Shastra you will find many descriptions of how elevated, and even when we read descriptions of memories of Srila Prabhupada, they describe Srila Prabhupada in such a wonderful manner. And it's quite amazing how they describe Srila Prabhupada. He has golden skin, he's glowing, his head is just slightly tilted up, he's very aristocratic. Although he's very short, he has all these tall disciples, and they're all like, his stature is so much greater when compared to his disciples, that they're all bowing down at his lotus feet, and he's there just, short man, but very commanding, very aristocratic. And Harishauri Prabhu even describes how Srila Prabhupada even would eat, even the way he eats, the way he would just tear, the roti, the chapati, very gracefully, and very gracefully collect, the sabji, and then, pop it right into his mouth, and the way he would chew and the way he would eat, it was very gracious. It was very, yeah, and even he would spit. It was all very gracious. It was all very, 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 very poetic in one sense. You know, you can literally, I mean, you can compose poems of how just about Srila Prabhupada eating. How does he eat? You could write a poem about how Srila Prabhupada is eating, because it's, Srila Prabhupada, he revealed how that, in the spiritual world, every word is a song and every step is a dance. His actions were also like that. So just some things I wanted to say. Right. Hare Krishna.
In regards to physiognomy, when we see this in the Srimad Bhagavatam, right when Shukadeva Goswami walks into the assembly of the sages, all the sages immediately stand up and offer him respect, because although from a third person view, he's only 16 years old, he's naked,
He's insane.
He's lunatic, right? He's an insane person. But the minute the saintly people saw, they all stood up. And Shukadeva Goswami was so beautiful that many girls and boys were going behind him and making fun of him. But the minute they realized that, whoa, who is this person? All these sages they were able to see, and the description of Shukadeva Goswami is so, it captures your mind actually. I remember just reading it for the first time, and really, it's etched in my memory. He's naked, his hair is so long, his facial features are perfectly formed, and his complexion is just like that of Krishna. Why is it just like that of Krishna? Because he's such a pure devotee of Krishna, he's always thinking of Krishna. That he even, in his womb, like when he came out of the womb, he had the same complexion like that of Krishna. And not just that, by the way he was standing, with the way he was walking, all the sages realized that this is an extremely exalted person. So anyway, that's also there.
Yeah. You are what you eat, as he says here. If you associate with the fire of Krishna devotional service, you also attain those qualities. Yeah.
That's why we chant Praptasya Kalyana Gunarnavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam. That we Praptasya, by worshipping the spiritual master, Praptasya Kalyana Gunarnavasya, you'll get the auspicious qualities. Praptasya means to obtain, Kalyana means auspicious, Guna means qualities. Praptasya Kalyana Gunarnavasya. You get Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam.
But so, I remember, one edition that I've read, doesn't it say this is the qualities, the spiritual master contains these transcendental qualities, therefore I bow down to his lotus feet. You're saying it could also be interpreted, praptasya. It can also mean that when you associate with him.
You can receive the same qualities as spiritual. By meditating.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. Anybody have anything to add? Mataji's? Iman Mataji, yes. Yes, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Okay. Going back to about how people perceive the Krishna consciousness movement and how their first impression is just they see the kirtan and the harinam and they're just like, they're like, oh, these people are crazy and they're acting crazy. I had an encounter with one of my mother's clients. She's a hairstylist, my mother, and her client. She was actually there when Srila Prabhupada was in New York, and she saw the Harinam going on there, and she was just like, these people, they're just coming to me, begging me for money and trying to force me to take these books. And ever since then, she just had this entire bad kind of view of the Krishna consciousness movement. But when my mother told me about her, and I was just like, well, does she have any of Srila Prabhupada's books? So when I got to encounter with her, I ended up actually distributing her the books. And ever since then, she's just like, well, I'm sorry for this, because she's just very favorable of course my mother, but then she's also favorable of the Krishna consciousness movement. And then every time I see her name is Miss Sharon. I say, Miss Sharon, you should come to the temple. You should come to the Sunday service. And she's just like, I'm just gonna read the books for now and do what I do on the side. So just commenting on just how you were saying about how Srila Prabhupada would say that the lovers of Krishna, they're also crazy, but in a bona fide and in a great way. So yeah, I just wanted to comment on that. And then my question is, going back to poetry and just being in the arts. I just had a conversation. I just had a conversation with Deja Montagy yesterday, and she was saying how people or devotees will try to use their artistic abilities to kind of like, use it in Krishna service. Like, I would say people who like to, I guess, put on plays and act and sing and dance. And then I had a question regarding poetry or just, art, being artists or artistic. So personally for me, I've always liked to draw, I like to sketch. So, but then I was just like, well, being in Krishna conscious, I don't really necessarily know how I can use that. I mean, of course I can draw.
What to draw.
Yeah, and like what to draw, and then also like poetry. Like I used to be into, of course, poetry, but it was completely mundane. But then I'm just like, well, what I'm more so asking is just like, how can you use these artistic qualities
Yeah.
in a bona fide way? Because of course I can't just write a song or a bhajan. I can't do that. So
Yeah. Well, the point is to stick within your current position. We can always write poetry praising the spiritual master, glorifying the spiritual master, glorifying the Vaishnavas. Can always draw the spiritual master, Now to write about something like the Rasa Leela or, draw the Rasa Leela, that's a bit, that's a bit exalted. So the point is just to stay where you're at. Now there may, and eventually, you'll advance. Yeah. But yeah, there's also this, I know my Guru Maharaj, His Holiness Bhakti Vikas Swami mentions, there's particular bhajans we don't sing often. What is that one? Oh yeah, that's an example. Shri Rupa Manjari Padma. Yeah, but like, Pada. Okay. But there's bhajans like Abhaya Charanara, Bhaja Hure Mana Shri Nanda, which are, anyways, the point he was making is that some bhajans we save for particular occasions because it's not quite on our level. But there are avenues which we can practice our arts. Yeah. Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Just to add on to that, I mean, the thing is that, whatever talents or inclinations we have, they just have to be properly guided. So there's room for poetic expression and Krishna consciousness and artistic ability. And I mean, we can see just some temples, I think the San Diego temple particularly, if you ever see the inside of it, the devotees kind of sculpted all of the different demigods and did all the art themselves on that. And then there's so much room for painting in Krishna consciousness and drawing. I mean, there's so many different pictures and things like that. And one may not be able to draw Krishna, but sometimes devotees do murals and things like that. And so there's tons of scope. We kind of just have to kind of look for it and see. And poetry also, there's devotees that have written poetry and things like that. But like you're saying, one should be cautious in writing poetry about Krishna and his pastimes and things, unless one, we read in the purport, unless one is sufficiently knowledgeable of that. But one can write poetry of the philosophy or whatever, the spiritual master or whatever, Mm-hmm. And also too, I mean, poetry is also an expression, so it's not, one, you don't have to write poetry and then just present it to the world and things like that. One can write poetry and show it to whatever, some close devotee friend and things like that. I think also too, the Goswamis, one would write some book, or he wrote some book in particular, or something like that, and it was just for the. Yeah, exactly. So he wasn't in that way. I mean, he's expressing that as being just for the benefit.
For Sanatana Goswami, you said?
Yeah. Because sometimes in the West, it's we want to write something or do something, but we want to really really to the whole world,
Yeah.
But that's not really the Vaishnav mood. Is or it is and it isn't. The devotees want to broadcast Krishna's glories here, there, and everywhere, but they're not writing for name and fame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good point.
So this is a point, maybe elaborate later, but it's also from Ramayana. But the expertise of speaking, understanding the other person, being a proper servant, Hanuman really exemplifies this mood. He's just to speak on the glories of Lord Hanuman. He's so after he sees Sita Devi in Lanka, he comes back to Kishkinda,
Right.
and he has to report to Lord Ram. So Kamba is very poetic, and the way he describes, so the way Hanuman actually he understands the mood of his master. He understands the concerns of his master. Hanuman is a servant of Lord Ram, and his mission is to go and find Sita. Now he found Sita. He doesn't just come and report to Lord Ram that he found Sita. It's not just that he found Sita, but he understands the heart of his master. And he thinks, how am I as a servant supposed to do my best to pacify him? Mm-hmm. So Hanuman does a number of things. One is for instance, he analyzes the entire fortification of Lanka. He analyzes the strength of he tests the strength of the Rakshasas, and he meets Ravana himself. So he does all these extra things that Hanuman was not asked to do. That's him thinking in the mood. But how much Lord Hanuman understands his master Lord Ram is quite amazing. That when Hanuman comes to see Rama realizing the exuberance of all the Vanaras and the monkeys, he realizes they must have some good news. So the first thing that Hanuman says, he says in this is common rights in Tamil, but he says, I have seen. But who did he see? He says, I have seen she who beautifies the word chastity. Wow. He doesn't say, I saw Sita. He says, I saw she who beautifies who makes the word chastity beautiful. Because Rama is not just concerned about whether she's alive or not and whether she's there, but he's also, as a husband whose wife has been away in somebody else's house for so long, of course in this case abducted, also wants to know if she still is chaste to him. This is you have to be a very, very, very extraordinary servant to understand the heart of your master like that. Mm-hmm. Anyways, there's so much more in that, and then he speaks more in this regard, but just more reflecting on the quality of expert and of how a Vaishnava is just beyond that. The Lord and his servant are both exemplary. They're exemplary beyond comparison.
Right.
There's just so much more can be said.
Yeah, I think in that pastime too, it said Hanuman, he could have saved Sita himself. It's within his power to do that. Right. But he knew the heart of Ram. He's the consort of Sita. It was his. That was reserved for him. So Hanuman also knew that. Yeah. Does anybody else have anything to add? Okay, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.